I never thought I would end up in Squid Game. It wasn't like I had any choice. One night, after a week of barely scraping by, I found a mysterious invitation slip under my door. It was simple, a red envelope with a black circle in the center. Inside, a single card read, "Join the game, win a fortune, or lose everything." It seemed too strange to ignore, but like so many others desperate for money, I didn't think twice. I signed up. They said to meet at a rundown warehouse on the edge of the city. The address was vague. The air was thick with tension as I arrived. Dozens of strangers, all with their heads down, shuffled towards a large van. The windows were blacked out. We were told to enter. Inside, the cold metal walls were lit by dim, sterile lights, the hum of machinery in the background. No one spoke. We all sat in rows, strapped into our seats. The feeling of unease crawled beneath my skin. My heart pounded. I wanted to leave, but the doors were locked. There was no turning back. The ride lasted for hours. When the van finally stopped, I was ushered out along with everyone else. We were led through a dark tunnel, a giant gray building with red neon lights flashing above, spelling out "Squid Game." The doors opened automatically and I was pushed inside. The room was stark, metal floors, high ceilings, and rows of chairs, each with a number. I was assigned number 42. We were all lined up facing a massive screen. The rules were simple: play, survive, and win. The first game was a child's game called Red Light, Green Light, but this was no ordinary game. A giant doll stood at the end of the field, its mechanical eye scanning us as it called out in a robotic voice.
Green light!
We were to run towards it. The catch? When it called,
Red light!
we had to stop. No movement allowed. The game started. I ran. My legs burned with each step, but I didn't dare look back. My eyes stayed fixed on the doll, whose head swiveled back and forth like a predator tracking its prey. Suddenly, the voice blared,
Red light!
I froze, but behind me someone didn't stop.
324?
I heard a sharp mechanical bang, followed by a scream. The sound was terrifying. I didn't dare look, but the others did. When they turned back, a body lay motionless on the ground, blood pooling around it. The doll's head turned towards the body, its face motionless, before it reassumed its chanting.
Green light!
A few more people were shot as they attempted to run after the next command. One by one, the numbers dwindled. I made it to the end. My heart was a drumbeat in my chest as I watched others fall. I sat in a cold corner later that night, trying to block out the images of the bodies. I heard a whisper. It was a soft, almost imperceptible sound, but it was there. It's not over. There's more. The next morning, we were given breakfast and prepared for the next game. The room was cold, colder than any basement I had ever been locked in before. A harsh light buzzed over her head as the game's master voice echoed through the speakers, disembodied and cold.
Sugar honeycomb. You will pass if you trim out the shape without it breaking or cracking within the time limit.
I glanced around. There were dozens of us, all nervously eyeing the thin, brittle slabs of honeycomb sugar in front of us. Each of us had been given a metal needle to cut out the specific shape which was pressed into the translucent treat before us. Mine was a star. The thick silence in the room was oppressive, filled with only the faint sounds of scraping and the occasional nervous breath. Some were already scratching at their edges, trying to loosen the delicate lines with shaky hands. One man next to me, his face pale and sweaty, was focused on a circle shape. Sweat dripped from his forehead onto the sugar, and his hands trembled uncontrollably as he worked the needle, pressing down on the honeycomb with too much force. Then there was a crack. A sharp, loud snap that echoed through the room. The man's face went ashen, and before he could react, a loud click rang out, followed by the cold metallic sound of a bullet firing. He crumpled to the floor, his body falling like a puppet with its strings cut. I froze, heart hammering. The game's master voice came again, casual and indifferent. One player has failed, one player has been eliminated. A cold sweat coated my skin. We were being watched. not just by cameras, but by the cold, heartless eyes of the guards in their masks standing silently at the edges of the room, their guns at the ready. I focused back on the star's shape before me, trembling. My hands were slick with sweat, and every movement felt too slow. I could feel the pressure of time pressing down on me, the seconds ticking away as I gently pressed the needle into the sugar. Too deep, too shallow. Every move felt like a mistake. Then seconds bled away as I tried to stay steady to hold it together. I could hear others around me, whispers of panic, the sound of sharp breaths and nails scraping against the fragile candy. One woman, 2 tables down, let out a muffled sob. There was no time for sympathy. If she failed, she would be gone. The room was filled with tense energy as each of us fought the same battle. The race against the clock, against their own trembling hands, against the inevitable fate awaiting anyone who faltered. I glanced at a man who had been standing beside me. His needle was shaking violently now, his face pale, and then, crack, the honeycomb shattered in his hands. I didn't even have time to flinch before the gunfire rang out, and his body dropped to the floor like a rag doll. My heart skipped a beat. The wall seemed to close in, and all I could focus on was the damn star. I couldn't afford to fail. I couldn't be like him or her, or anyone else. 5 minutes left, the game's master voice cut through the silence, eerily calm. The honeycomb was delicate, almost too fragile to touch. My needle slid carefully along the lines, prying at the edges, but then I felt it. A subtle snap. A faint break in my line, my breath hinged. No, I couldn't stop now. I focused all my attention on the star, my mind screaming to finish it. My hands were no longer my own. Each movement felt alien, forced, like I was trapped in a nightmare. The honeycomb was too thin in places, too brittle, threatening to crumble under the smallest pressure. Crack. Another shape failed. The sound was distant, but the chill in the air grew stronger. I heard another body drop. The sound of it hitting the cold floor echoed, but I didn't dare look. Time was running out. I pressed the needle in one final stroke, trembling, praying, begging for the shape to hold. Click. The star was intact. I held my breath, staring down at it, not daring to move. For a moment, everything was still. Then I heard the voice of the Grandmaster again.
Congratulations, you've passed.
I blinked. The words barely registered in my brain. My heart still pounded, my hands trembled, but I had survived. I had made it. The other players who hadn't finished were led away, their final moments met with a cold, indifferent sound of gunfire. But me? I wasn't safe yet. I knew that. I knew that as long as I was in the game, nothing was certain. For now, though, I had made it. I had survived the honeycomb. But at what cost? The next game was a brutal test of strength and teamwork. The field was on a high platform suspended over an endless abyss. We were paired with strangers and our task was simple. Win the tug of war, fail, and you fall to your death. The rope was coarse in my hands. My team, a group of 10, gripped it tight as we faced off against another team. I could hear the other group strategizing, laughing, taunting, but none of us understood the true meaning of the game until it began. The rope tugged like it had a mind of its own. I could feel my hands burning, my arms aching, my knees buckling. We pulled, gritted our teeth, fought like animals. The other team screamed as they tumbled, and I heard a sickening sound when they hit the ground below. One by one, their bodies disappeared. I couldn't breathe. We had won, but the victory tasted bitter. The next game was a nightmare I'll never forget. We were paired with a partner, someone we could trust, or so we thought. My partner was an old man, his face wrinkled with age, his eyes soft but haunted. He said nothing as we were told the rules. Play marbles. Win all your opponent's marbles or die. We played. I could see the fear in his eyes, but he tried to hide it. He didn't know that I was trying to win. I had to win. My survival depended on it. But then came the moment. His voice, trembling, said, take my marbles. I'm too old for this." I hesitated, but I had no choice. I took them. I won. And when I looked down at him kneeling to the ground, the realization hit me like a blow to the chest. He had trusted me. He had given me his life. But that trust wasn't enough. I watched as he was dragged away, screaming, his hands reaching for me in desperation.